सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। We are studying this theory of perception. We need to remember that we use the word perception, we are referring to the process of gaining knowledge of the external world. How we are getting to know the existence of the external world. So that is the study here. So when we are studying that, there are two groups of people come in. One group says the mind is that which projects the world outside. There is no world at all outside. It is the mind that is projecting it. It is fully the mind's action, mind's projection. They were called idealists. And then there are many different branches are there. The ideas were evolved and all that. If you see the idea, this evolution of this, if you see, they make it better and better, and they bring in new systems and all those things. As the other fields also keeps changing. See, all the fields of knowledge interact with each other. See, it's a very close relationship, an intimate relationship exists between the physical science and philosophic speculations, thinking. When I say speculations, what I mean is thinking. So, the field of science and the field of philosophy has a very close relationship. Any new ideas or new discoveries developed, established in one has an impact on the other. So there is a close connection with all this. So it is very difficult for us to study these things in isolation. No field of inquiry can be done in absolute isolation. Like you cannot study politics without psychology. You cannot study psychology without economics. You cannot, study this without science. You cannot discuss all this without culture. It is all interlinked. Right? So, when you are reading this, you have this specific field. So, when you see this, development of ideas, that is how many thinkers have contributed further and further developments of those things. So that's how we get very many schools. So in every system they have different angles to it. So each angle has there is something common with all of them, something peculiar to each one of them. See, so like if you take Shaivism has got 6 branches. Shaivism itself has got 6 branches. Philosophically, But all of them agree on one thing. What is that? All of them agree that all of us should be worshipping Shiva. All of them agree that all of us have to be applying the ashes. All of them agree on few points, but then there is a difference also exists in that. See, each one. Similarly, this idealism and realism has many subclasses to it, and many thinkers have contributed to that in different ways. We saw three prominent names only: Berkeley, Kant, and Hegel. These are the three main contenders for idealism. Now their philosophy is this: mind is projecting it. There's nothing outside. It is all your mind creation. This is one group. The realist comes and says, no. The world is existing independent of your mind. Your mind can be there, cannot be there. We don't care about the mind. World is standing on its own. It is not dependent on your mind. So there is a tussle. There is a arguments between those two schools. And in between we have Vedanta standing. Now remember, our priority is to study Vedantic theory of perception, not to discuss about where is Berkeley's is idealism, and then Hegel's absolute idealism. Allah is not our is not my job, right? So that is not the main purpose here. The main agenda here is to know there is a thought like that existing, and then we saw there those people have an argument. Idealist gives his arguments. He gives a proof. And now the realist, they say, they have an objection to the idealist. What is the main objection of the realist to idealist? He says, look here, your explanation is not accounting for many things. Many things are not accounted by your explanation, that it is mind that is projecting there. Because this will not be able to explain the continuity of my experiences and the regularity that we see. There are very many gaps in the day-to-day experience of every one of us. So your philosophy has certain limitations. Your explanation has a limitation. This is the basic idea. And then we also saw what is Vedanta saying. Of course, there are other objections also being raised, but essentially we found Vedanta giving two basic arguments again. We say it is the mind that is seeing. Which mind? Whose mind is the standard? Whose senses are to be taken as the standard? Right. There we get into a trouble. Obviously, all of us will say human mind, human senses. Human senses are not to be the standard. Who gave the authority? We can't say we ourselves gave the authority for that. You see, then it is not the valid one. Second one we saw is this. Your you give a lot of importance to the mind, which is part and parcel of creation. It is part of it. part of the waking world. Again, we need to remember this word creation here. Suddenly, from perception, we jump to another word now. See, otherwise, we should have retitled the topic as Theory of Creation. See, the chapter should be titled as Theory of Creation. No. Theory of Perception, we say. In that, why are you using the word creation here? Now, this is what we call as paribhasha. See, every subject has a particular special names, special words were used, specific words were used. In that subject, that word has a particular meaning in that context. Right? The word creation in this context, if you take, is not to be treated in the normal sense of creation, what is referred. Normally, creation means what? Something is brought into existence. This is the idea. This is how idealists refer. This is how realists also refer to the world perception. That's why he is inserting that word in between. Suddenly, the word creation comes in. World is not a product, cannot be the product of the creation of the mind. Why? Because it is part and parcel of it. So how can you put the responsibility of a part of the creation be responsible for creation itself? There is a fallacy. There is a basic error you have made. The error is this. Logical error. How can it be done? Example we saw is this. The dreamer and the dream world came together. Right? It is not that first the dream world came and then the dreamer entered. This is what we all believe with reference to our state. Isn't it? World was existing and I entered the world. I live in this world for a period of time and then I disappear, the world will continue. Right? This is the problem we have. This way there is a wrong approach you are having. This is not the way it is. How can you make the part responsible for the creation? Because Waker's mind itself is part of creation. You are part of the creation. And how can you be made? Then what is meant by perception here, creation here? Creation here means perception, creation and all used in the synonymous terms. Meaning, how do you gain the knowledge of the world? That's about it. See, here comes the realism. From idealism, he leads to realism now. Now we come to the basic idea. What is that? We say, look here. Knowing something is different from being. I know, I do not know. Whether I know or I do not know is dependent on my mind. Right? Me knowing that there is a tree doesn't mean I have created the tree. This is the starting point of realism. Okay. So we start by saying he started from idealism. Why from idealism? Because for all of us, one thing none of us can question. None of us have any doubts on whether I have mind or not. Right? Do you have thoughts? Any one of us have a doubt? Or do you have a thought? Because do I have a thought itself is a thought. Yeah. So that is why he starts the analysis from idealism. Strictly speaking, we should have started from realism. But he doesn't start from realism. He first analyzes idealism and then takes it to realism. Even though, if you see the evolution of idealism and realism, if you see the idea, how it evolved, idealism evolved from realism only. Because realism is common to everyone. There is no particular theorization needed. You don't have to be a great thinker for you to arrive at that conclusion. See? So, everyone believed. See, seeing is believing, no? Seeing is the proof. I am seeing. I heard. The moment I heard something means it is real. What is there to think? This is the basic common sense view. From common sense view, realism evolved, and then realism had certain problems. Then further establishment, they tried something. Personalities like John Locke and all that, they brought in to fill in the gaps, fill in the inadequacies of realism. They brought in something. From what brought out by John Locke is where Berkeley brings out his idealism itself. So, actually, evolution of idea, if you see, it's almost like common sense, realism, idealism. And not only that, if you, as the subject physical science started developing more and more and more, we find the realists are more insecure. Idealism is somewhat, is secured from the development of science, from the onslaughts, the bashing of scientific discoveries. Because suddenly they say the electrons behave according to the perceiver. Depending on the perceiver, it is varying in its behavioral pattern. And they say molecules of water arranges itself in a particular way depending upon the person who is standing in contact with it. Therefore, there is a tremendous influence of the observer on the observed. And then the matter itself is questioned by the development of science today. Because basic definition of matter is what? That which has mass and occupies a space. This is a basic definition. Because I am saying all this, don't think I have studied science a lot. Okay. Elementary school science, more than that, I don't know. I heard from people who have studied it. So, if there is anything wrong you find in my statements, nothing is mine here. Right. Matter is what? That which has mass. Now suddenly the development of science has come in and challenged that itself. How they are saying? There is antimatter is there, it seems. This Big Bang, this universe bursted, it burst into two halves, it seems. One side it is moving in one direction, another side it is antimatter is there. There, for us, time moves in which direction? Past, present, future, no. In antimatter, first future. Future, present, past. First you will start bleeding. Then you will get hurt. Where? Antimatter. Say, now what are you talking? I say. What are you referring? As the thing is there outside. It is struggling actually. The one who got a real bashing because of the development of sciences, realists were affected much more than the idealist seems to be far more secure. See, that's exactly what we are also talking. And Vedanta is in the absolute comfort. Because it says, we don't care whether development of science is there, not development of science is there, we don't care about it because that is totally irrelevant as far as we are concerned. We'll see that when we go to Vedantic theory of perception. So, even though the idea evolved like this, seemed to have evolved in this fashion, the book is not moving in that direction. Book is moving in the opposite direction. Why opposite direction? Is because we can challenge, we can question the existence of the tree outside. But you can never have a doubt on existence of your mind. You see, that's why first he analyzed idealism. From there he is moving to realism now. What is the basic stand of realist? Basic stand of realism is this: the mind is made up of insubstantial matter. It is insubstantial thoughts. That insubstantial thoughts, how can it produce substantial world? This is the basic stand. So, realism, when you are studying, you should remember these 2 points. For realist, point number 1 is knowing is different from being. This is point number 1. Second major contention they have, major valid point these people carry is, how can a insubstantial matter produce a substantial world? How is it possible? According to idealists, mind is projecting. So all that I have to do is what? I wanted to have a Ferrari car. Project it, no? Get the car. Model car also you can't get. Forget about the toy cars, you can't get. Nothing. Your mind cannot be producing a substantial world. Full stop. So therefore, they completely dismiss idealist stand. Because the fundamental problem of idealism is what? They take the mind to be the subject. They take mind to be the subject and the world to be the object. Absolute. Right. This is where the problem is. The cognitive powers of the mind it cannot create what it cognizes. Your mind has the cognitive power, correct? There's no doubt about it. There, realist is not objecting. Realist is not objecting to the idealist stand. But he says, your mind can cognize. But cognizing is not creation. This is their basic contention. Because again he asks the same question. This is what he raised earlier with idealism. He says, if it is the case, if it is a creation of the mind, then the question will come to which mind? Because no idealist is taking a stand that all minds are same. If you say all minds are different, then there has to be different world. But we don't seem to be actually living in different world. If all of us were to be living in different world, exactly like when you go to sleep, all of us live in a different world of dream. There is no interaction possibility between one dreamer and another dreamer. Both of us may be sleeping in the same room. When you go for this yatra and all, this Shabarimala yatra, the whole group of us will go and we'll hire one tent, something like tent, not like actual tent like tent. Something like in the jungle they'll have something, just to cover your, the head, that's all. They'll have something. You sleep there. About 30, 40 of us are sleeping. All of us have mind. All of us are having dream. All of us are in our own dream world. Is there a possibility of interaction? But here we are interacting, no. When I say car, all of us understand car in the same manner. When I say elephant, all of us understand elephant in the same way. That is how we are able to have an interaction. Therefore, it is not. This is the stand of a realist. Therefore, the world outside there is not you projecting. Right? You may see that in a particular way. That is because of your mind. But what it is there is not because of your projection. That movie example is not correct, he says. It is not like that cinema theatre where the projector is projecting a movie on a blank screen. So what is out there is not a blank screen. It is there. This is the basic idea. And we will see in detail what is realism and how realist presents his idea and what is the objection for that realism. Now he has objected idealist. Okay. Now the turn comes to the realist to say what he has to say, and then let's see what is Vedantic take on that. Yes.
Page 297, Realism. Realism is a theory which makes the object responsible for the creation of the world, which considers the world real as it appears. The realists believe things are real in themselves. You see the sun shining above, a hill standing yonder, a brook flowing across the meadow. They say all these have a reality of their own, independent of your thoughts. Realists also advance arguments in support of their theory. Their main contentions are: 1. You perceive things and beings right before you because they are all there. Not only you, everyone perceives them. You see a horse, you see the same horse over and over again, day after day. The horse does not transform itself into a mule. It never does. Your mind may undergo change, but the horse remains a horse, just because it is real in itself. 2. The idealists contend that everything is a creation of the mind. If that be so, let their minds create what they wish. Let their minds produce a horse or a mule. They can never do that. They cannot produce substantial things out of insubstantial thoughts. The realists treat the object all important and disregard the subject, just the opposite of what the idealists do. Realists believe the object to be everything. They consider the variable, changeable world of objects to be real in itself. They do not realize that the object also is a part of the creation. You cannot hold the object alone responsible for the creation of the world, but the realists believe it to be so. That is where their mistake lies. Thus, the idealists and realists have been in constant conflict with each other, with their arguments and counter arguments, quibbling and quarreling with no meeting point. The Vedantic theory of perception takes both the subject and object into account, reconciles the differences between the realists and the idealists, and presents a comprehensive formula for the phenomenon of this world.
World is as you perceive it. This is the stand of the realist. What do you see? That is how the world is. You see a horse there, you see a horse there. Because the perception of a horse is possible only when the horse is there. Instead of a horse, I keep a mule there. Then what will you perceive? You perceive a mule. And not only that, there are two main points he gives here, realist. He says, see, it is not only I am seeing the horse. All of us see horse. Right? Now, when all of us are seeing horse, suddenly you can't say that is because of our mind projected it. It doesn't seem to be fully valid. The action of observation, the act of perception, act of cognition cannot affect the observed. Isn't it? I observe, imagine that I observe it as mule. Does the horse transform itself into mule or what? Does it? And the argument immediately that the realist gives is this. He says, hey, if that is the case, you observe me as elephant. You think that I am elephant now. Have I become elephant? You may think that I have become elephant, but that doesn't mean I have become elephant. That is something wrong with your mind, something wrong with your eyes, something wrong with your cognitive power. That is not going to be changing anything there. Therefore, it is independent of the first thing that he does is he is making it independent of your mind. First thing realist has to do is he has to say that look here, there has to be something that is existing independent of your mind. Because idealist says everything is dependent on mind. Now, suddenly this realist problem is he has to establish that there has to be something independent. For that he brings in this reasoning. He says, how is that possible? The cognition. And then he gives the basic idea. The world was in existence long before the mind has appeared. Right? Long before you came into picture, your father was there, no? Because without that father, you would not be there. Does father came first or son came first? We are living in the matter side. We are not living in the antimatter. In the antimatter side, how it will be? First grandson, and then father, and then grandfather will be born. I don't know how life will be there. It will be very different. First you will die, and then you will get life as an old man, and then you will come as middle age, and then you come to this, and finally you go inside the womb. how that would be. We don't know, it's just a theory. I have no idea about what exactly the meaning of the term is, but this is my imagination. If they say antimatter, things are all in the reverse direction, then time also should be functioning in the reverse direction only. Reverse direction means what? Past, present, future, future, past, present. No, it is reverse now. Confusing it is. But we are living in the matter side. Therefore, it says, you came after, before the world existed. So therefore, there is something existing independent of the mind. So you cannot make mind responsible. Then he says it is totally independent of the mind. Again, the same mistake of the idealist. Yes, that is totally independent of the, because if there is no perceiving mind, if there is no perceiver, where is a proof of existence of the perceived? Imagine there is no perceiver at all. Nobody is perceiving. They give a beautiful argument. It says, imagine in a place where there is no beings existing, a lone tree in a place falls. Will it make sound or not? You can never answer the question, yes or no. Because if you say yes, you will immediately ask, how do you know? So, the fact that the world we are discussing is because of the perceiver. If there is no perceiver, there is no possibility of the proof of existence of the perceived. This fellow will give a rebuttal to that. He says, no, this is not. That's where if you read that, it's like listening to the spokespersons. This Congress spokesperson comes and speaks. You listen to him. Correct, huh? Correct. This is such a fast, correct, he will say. He goes. BJP spokesperson comes. You listen to him. Correct. He is also correct. And both the fellows, what they have said is exactly opposite. One fellow says this is the useless budget, another fellow says this is the best budget. Progressive budget, futuristic budget, this something they will say, and they will prove it. And they give their reasoning. That's how this idealist and realist. When you read this idealism and realism, and you got to read them parallelly. The mistake many people make is, those who read that idealism, they just read only idealism. You should not do that. You should always read it contrasting with each other. That's where it is difficult. And that's what I said in the beginning. You see, the problem is, okay, sir, by knowing all this, what is the use of it? I thought the class strength will drop. Enough of, what use is this? Whether the world is impinging on the mind or the mind is going and, perching itself on the world. Whether outside in or inside out. What is this, man? He said. Now, this is the problem. So here he gives the objections to the mistakes of the realist. What is the flaw of the realist? Same mistake of the idealist. What is it? He takes a part and says that part is responsible for the whole thing. Everything is dependent on the world only. Idealist says mind is real. The realist says world is real. Therefore, what is the final agenda of studying perception? Remember that you should always keep in the backdrop. For what we are accounting for all this? What are we establishing with all this? What are we trying to do with all this? Keep asking this question time and again. Of course, it is very interesting, the reasonings and objections and the satisfactory explanation given for that objection, and then he raises the thesis, antithesis, synthesis, and then thesis, antithesis, synthesis, thesis, antithesis, synthesis. All this is so fascinating. But fundamentally, what are we trying to achieve? Through idealism and through realism, we are making one mistake. Idealist makes a mistake of taking the subject to be real, and the realist takes the object to be more real. Then we have to ask this question: is there gradation in reality? Is there order in reality? If there is order in reality, on what basis you are going to say this belongs to the lower order, that belongs to higher order reality? For that, they keep this argument of perception. Because the entire perception is dependent on the mind is of the higher order of reality, the object is not having a reality. Idealist. Realist comes and says, no. Object is existing independent of the knowing mind, cognizing mind. Therefore, object. So essentially, what are they trying to establish? Essentially, both of them are trying to establish the nature of reality and what is real. Now, this is where Vedanta comes and says, my dear fellows, your attempt to probe into reality, I am fully with. I am fully with something of yours. Correct. What is it? Your basic agenda, the basic purpose of inquiry. The fundamental purpose of inquiry is to know what is real, which is real, what is the nature of reality. That is your purpose. To establish the reality is the purpose. If establishing reality is the purpose for your inquiry, for idealist or realist, both of you are lost. Both of you have missed. Both of you have come to a wrong conclusion. Your purpose is correct. Your starting point is also correct. That is Vedantic theory of perception. That's how next idea gets developed. So idealists and realists are coming into this inquiry of which is real. Idealists say the mind is real. The realist says the object is real. Now, where does this idealist is wrong? Where is the mistake of his? He's not accounting for various differences we see here, he says. Have you seen people taking pictures? Taj Mahal. You've seen pictures of people who are pushing that pizza. I've seen people swallowing sun. Hmm? The Eiffel Tower looks huge when you go closer. When you stand at a distance, Eiffel Tower looks this much. People have taken pictures of original Eiffel Tower. I'm holding it within my two fingers. Which is the size of it? Which perception? What is actual? Realist. What is your answer for that? If Eiffel Tower is totally independent, means it should look same, no? Whether I am closer or whether I am at a distance. It's not. It is not showing like that. Then how are you going to be, realist? How are you going to be accounting for the illusion? How are you going to account for hallucinations? For hallucination, if totally independent, how do you account for it? Maybe the whole thing that we are saying is a hallucination. Then what happens? Then how are you going to be resolving that issue? You see, now here again there is a gap that comes into picture. Like what we saw the gap in the idealistic one, similarly there is a gap in the realistic one also. You go and touch the fire. Okay. When you touch the fire, you get a sensation of, you get a feel of burning. Right? The pain. From where you got the pain? The fire or hand? Pain is where now? In the fire or in the hand? Of course, you experience it where? The hand only. Okay. And then of course, you have to go into the deeper science of it. Now that's not what we are going into now. Okay. Hand means what? Not just the hand, sir. It is the nerves that is carrying, and then the brain, and then the brain center, and then the mind. Finally, it lands in mind. That's all. So when we say hand, what we mean is the perceiver. Okay. But when I say that is green, the greenness, how are you attributing it there? If the painness, if you are attributing it here, the greenness of the object, how are you attributing there? The greenness also can be here, no? It's not there. Because according to a realist is what? It's green. That's all. Don't ask. It's green, no. The greenness of the object is independent. You are just seeing it. That's all. If he says, then you have to say what? The painness is also in fire. You are only seeing it. Sometimes you may not see it also. But pain is not in you. Pain is where? In fire. Will you say pain is part of fire? Suddenly we say, "Ayyo." See, this is how the whole objection goes into. So the different properties, different qualities and different things that we are perceiving there is not inherent. Without the participation of the mind, there is no possibility. There is no way that you can talk about the properties are standing independent. All the properties that you are talking about, what John Locke calls as primary properties and secondary properties. He says primary properties are independent of the mind, secondary properties only belong to the mind. He tries to justify that. He says, no. If you, on what basis you are keeping primary properties standard, static, fixed? No. Even the primary properties were not fixed. They are also variable. The moment you say variable based on what? Variable based on the mind. So therefore, again it falls back to mind only. So none of these things per se, the object is not existing, says the idealist. Realist comes and says the objects are existing independent. Therefore, the object is real. No. Without the subject, object cannot exist. Therefore, object is dependent for its existence on the mind. Therefore, the mind is real, the object is unreal. Says idealist. Realist comes and says, object is standing independent of the mind, therefore object is real. That is realism. Now Vedanta comes and gives its theory. Now Vedanta comes and reconciles both. It says, no man, idealist, you are right to some extent and you are wrong there. Similarly, realist, you are right to some extent, you are wrong here. And then goes on to establish what is real. What is absolutely real. Then whatever we are perceiving, what is this? Whatever perceiving is illusion. Next chapter. Oh, then what about my perception? Then how do you account my perception? The perception is illusion. Full stop. Realist perception is also illusion. Idealist perception theory also illusion. Both are illusion. Okay, what about Vedantic theory? That is also illusion. Whatever you are perceiving is illusion. Where? Next chapter. And then what is the nature of that reality? Next chapter. Because finally our problem is how, where I stand. Oh man, you are that supreme reality. Book is over. This is how the chapters are evolving. See? So our focus is not to worry about what is idealist saying, what is realist saying. Of course, we have to know it. Right? Because it is there, I have to explain. So I have explained. Right? But our problem is not to know about all these things. Our purpose is to understand idealism and realism only to the extent that it will facilitate our understanding of Vedantic theory of perception. You see, what is Vedanta saying, you have to know. That's about it. Like someone asked me, what do you think of, some statement they picked up from somewhere. They asked me to explain. I said, look here, if you pick up something from Vedanta and ask me to explain, I can explain. Now, why are you asking me to explain from that textbook? Which, and how do you expect me to know about it? I have not, ascended this, position of, Sarvajna. Sarvajna Pitala, I am not having. Right? I'm having just a normal chair. Local plastic chair only we use. Sarvagya Peter, no, we don't use. You go and ask those people. But when you claim that I have studied Vedanta, as a student of Vedanta, you are supposed to know what does Vedanta say. What is the stand of Vedanta in this? For that, basically you have to know what is idealism and what is realism. That's about it. Fundamentally, you have to know only one thing. What is idealist stand, what is realist stand. Idealism says this, realism says this. So don't spend much time with reference to idealism and realism. Right? That's not necessary at all, actually. What is essential is to ponder. And remember, these chapters, these subsequent chapters and this chapter and all is not to be, kept for explaining. These chapters are meant more for contemplation. These chapters are meant for you to reflect, for you to think over. And you need content and you need material to think over. The problem is on what you will think. Is a attachment. On attachment, if you start thinking, the problem is you will start going back to, am I attached to my wife? Am I attached to my child? Am I attached to my car? Am I attached to my pencil? You will go back to only I. That's all, nothing else. You can't think on attachment independently. You say, okay, start thinking in terms of karma, bhakti, jnana, then immediately you will start thinking in terms of, am I a karma yogi, bhakta, or a jnani? Where am I? Am I growing as a bhakta? I think bhakta is the correct one. Jnani, no. Not for Kali Yuga. Not for that. Now, so many problems will come into picture. Ideal ground for you to harness your skills on reflection, contemplation is these chapters. These are the chapters. I wouldn't even recommend law of causation for you to reflect. Even law of causation is very difficult for you to reflect objectively, independent. The moment you start thinking of karma and all those things, immediately you will start thinking in terms of, what about my karma, sir? I say, okay, discuss about death, immediately you will say, what about my death? After my death, where will I go? Right. Doesn't matter wherever you go. Right. But you will say, where will I go? Will I go to heaven or will I go to hell? Then the problem is which heaven I will go. Because if there is only one heaven, there is no problem. These fellows say there are very many heavens. Right. Now, which heaven you will go, there is a problem. And will I get that proper ticket? Suppose if this fellow instead of the flight takes off here, is supposed to land there, some problem there. Suddenly they are diverted and landed here. Say, landing problems are there. You can't be landing, so you go to this heaven. Imagine a fellow who is a staunch Vaishnavite, Vishnu Bhakta, landed in Shivaloka. That's also heaven only. But for him, is it heaven? This is what we call as hell. For a hardcore Vaishnavite, putting him in Shivaloka is heaven. Hella. Yeah. He wants to see Vishnu. And this man, Shiva standing there. And he is dancing also. He says. But for a Shiva Bhakta, Shivaloka is what? Standing there. Where will you go? What will happen? Will I get a proper, this one, that one? And most of these people have this problem. Sir, after my death, will my son do my final rites or not? You are gone. What difference does it make? He is doing, not doing. Weird, All this you can get into. Previous to this chapter, Any portion of the book you can take, any aspect of philosophy you can take, Vedanta you can take. Very difficult for you to do an objective discussion, because every one of them have a direct implication to your life. Whereas these 4 chapters, absolutely no connection to you or your life. Berkeley says this. So what? Your problem will be, sir, the stock market is falling. That is your problem. Has the war actually started or not? Because one group says it's not actually a war, another group says actual war started. Will it become third world war or what? And what are we supposed to do now? And what is this? This is your problem. Now suddenly Berkeley says this. John Locke gives this to primary qualities, secondary qualities. As a primary quality, secondary quality, for what you have to know all these things? That fatigueness will come so quickly. It will not be engaging and entertaining. Remember, that is a classical property of a Shastra. Remember this. This kavyas will have a tremendous engagement. See, but Shastric study will not have that. There is zero entertainment value. There is no description, there is no emotion, there is no humor, there's various rasas, nothing will be there. That is why Ramayana, Mahabharata, Bhagavatam, all those things have a tremendous appeal. Huge following. Oh, I remember few years back, this is about 12 years back or so. Years back, someone in the class has been pestering me to take this Sundarakandam portion. I said, okay, we'll do. But there is a way to do it. When you do it, you have to do it in a proper way. So I've told them, this is the procedure. Yeah, I will not change it. But I will try to do it in one day. I can't do the full thing. I'll try to give a synopsis of it. We had very big appeal. After attending that class, another fellow organized it in another place. Sundarakandam exposition of Ishwaran is the best interpretation. He said, I am not claiming, okay? I said, I wouldn't have sat in that lecture for 5 minutes. But because I have heard, people who are authorities on that, for 30 days I have heard, 1 month. 1 month he was speaking on Sundarakandam. Every day evening, 2 hours lecture on Sundarakandam. Sarga by Sarga explaining. Unbelievable they are. This one. Usual. And he organized another place. And it came in papers along. I said, my God, Bhagavad Gita I've been teaching for the last, 25 years. Suresh, Bilani, Tanya, I don't know who are all there. You ask, Bilani or these people, how many years they have been attending the classes. They have already attended minimum of 1200 classes of mine. 1200 classes, calculate. And yeah, 97 onwards you are there, no? My class, I am only saying. Before that you are attending other classes also. I am not including that. And they have already completed 2 cycles of online course. One cycle of online course has got 450 classes. 2 cycles of online course means 900 classes. 1200 plus 900, YOLO. 2100 classes over already. I'm talking about only class, not about their independent study and all that. I have to speak to them. If I'm not getting BP, it has to be tamasic. Tension only, no, you get tensed. Every class when I sit and I say the prayers, I am reminded of that, Al Gibran story of, the troublemaker. Sir, I have attended 2000 classes of Vedanta. I have not understood anything. Yo, give content and material. Not easy to. This hardly any entertainment value. You have to know what is there are certain salient features of a Shastra. When you read those Shastras, you will not have any entertainment value. There's no humor, there's no descriptions, and lot of paribhashas, lexicon, they say, no? To that particular subject. You see, each one has their own. All this will be totally away from your day to day. That's why it is difficult to get tuned to these things. It's very easy to tune into the story part. Slightly more easier, difficult is to tune into something like the introduction to Vedanta, practical Vedanta and all that. Little more. But you need absolute stamina to withstand the essence of Vedanta. Whether you have the capacity to withstand that or not is why the first two chapters given here. See, positive religion, negative religion, hitting under the belt. You read the chapter, suddenly he starts whipping you left, right, center. It is a whip. Can you withstand the whip? And then law of causation, little stretching, little challenge to your thinking with the law of karma and the theory of reincarnation. And then the real essence of Vedanta starting from this chapter, theory of perception. Theory of perception, illusions, supreme reality, that the what. These 4 chapters are not going to be chapters which are easy to relate to. You may have to read it again and again and again. I don't know how many times, because I have no idea how many times I have read this. Again and again and again you have to read. Same thing. But what is interesting in this portion is it gives you that depth, challenging your thinking, stretching your imagination, questioning the very basis of life. There, your intellect gets maximum stretched. That's how you can build your intellect. Reading Ramayana, Mahabharata, intellect building will not happen. Strengthening of intellect cannot happen. Strengthening of intellect happens only from these portions. So carefully read these 2, Idealism and Realism, independently. Right? Think over that. And then we will see what is Vedantic theory of perception.